afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. Separation and divorce is difficult for both adults and children, but extensive research shows that how adults handle their family restructuring makes a big difference in how children respond to the situation. For more than 20 years, UVM Extension and the Vermont Family Court System have collaborated on the Coping with Separation and Divorce program known as COPE. COPE equips parents with tips and tools to help their children adjust successfully to changes in their family life. For more on COPE, here's Program Director Marcia Bettig.
Hi, I'm Marcia Bettig with the University of Vermont Extension. Each year in this country, over 1 million children experience their parents' divorce. While statistically common, when this happens to you and your family, it can feel very overwhelming. That's why UVM Extension collaborates with the Vermont Family Court System to provide the COPE program.
What the COPE class is trying to do is to teach parents about the normalcy of what they're going through, skills they can learn, and how to answer their children's questions when children say, well, what happened, and give them really practical advice, as well as a group of people going through the same process who are all understandably quite distraught.
None of us are born with the knowledge of how to raise children. That's hard enough to learn, but then to raise children when at a time when a child is going through a significant traumatic event, and the parent themselves are also going through that traumatic event, we all need help with that.
When I found out about the course, the media that we're working with said, you'll see some couples like to hold hands going into class and they sit and they take notes, and I'm thinking that is not going to be my experience with this class. But there were couples that were there together, there were people that were apart, there were people that had been separated from their spouses, from their former spouses for 10 years, people that had been separated for 3 weeks. I mean, it was just all over the board. And again, just really nice to see nobody's story is going to be the same. And the way you interact with your children, it's going to be different, but we're all kind of gunning for the same result. Let's get through this, let's survive this, let's make sure the kids are okay, let's make sure I'm okay.
I really didn't want to be there. I didn't think I needed to be there. And as soon as I walked through the door, I'm just looking around at people sitting down, and I'm like, I shouldn't be here, I don't belong here. These are for other people, but that changes when you sit down and you start hearing stories, and you come to realize that we're all here for the same reason. We're all going through divorce, and we're here because we all have kids.
The COPE program also helps parents to put into perspective that this is not about them. It's about the child. And sometimes the COPE program is the first time that people hear that.
As time went on through the class, something clicked. And the things that the instructors were saying, I could see it in my kids. And it's just what they did, it allowed me to put myself in my kids' shoes. And I think that's what's really helped me the most, is being able to put myself in their shoes and really feel what they're feeling.
A big relief to have somebody sort of hand you some great tips and tools, and just a reason to get your mind away from itself. So a great reason to focus on your children, to think about them, to get off of your own grief and focus on what somebody else needs right now. Again, it can be really critical.
I've had a number of people stop in during the break in the class and say, with tear-filled eyes, I had no idea what I was doing to my child. Nobody ever told me that that's their perspective.
One of the mistakes that often happens is that they will start a conversation with each other in the presence of the child, maybe at drop-off and pickup for a visit. And they're not speaking with each other as much as they used to, and so one parent sees this as an opportunity to because the other parent is there, to ask the parent about something that triggers some of those angry feelings. Why didn't you do this? Why aren't you doing this other thing? How come you did this? And that, all of a sudden, what starts out, what was intended and maybe initially to be a discussion, a calm discussion, all of a sudden escalates into an angry fight that happens right in front of the child, and the child ends up getting caught in the middle. So one of the things that parents need to learn to do is to not get the child caught up in the middle of their relationship with the other parent.
The kids are happier if they see that you're not arguing with your spouse, even though you may not approve of what your spouse has done, or you may feel anger towards your spouse, is to not let that anger spill onto your kids.
You know, you may watch the videos during the class and you see a child coping or not coping and you go, I want that kid. I want that kid to be my kid. I want that response. You know, when we have a conversation, especially if your children are young like ours were when we separated, you know, I want to think 10 years from now, I'm going to have a great candid conversation at the appropriate level of information, which I thought was a great benefit to having the course. Was, how do you gauge as a parent? How much do you tell your children? You know, you don't necessarily need to run down a play-by-play, you know, blow-by-blow schematic of how things went wrong, but just understanding there is opportunity to change, you know, and present the appropriate story at the appropriate age, and that story may change in detail as the children grow older. Really gave me a lot to think about. What conversations am I having with my 4-year-old now? What will I say when he's 8? What will I say when he's 12? And know that as a parent, it is my responsibility to decide the tone of that conversation and what's appropriate for that child to know. So that was incredibly valuable for me to actually get out of the class.
You got to be able to talk to your kids, and I talk to my kids about stuff I never ever thought I would ever have to talk about. But I always left that to the others, to my spouse. But now it's like, you know, I want to stay close to these girls. We could be eating supper and all of a sudden there'd be a question about the divorce. What does this mean? Or what does that mean? And so we talk about it. We do a lot of talking.
One of the things that the COPE class does is it helps parents to start to see what this event through the eyes of their child. And that is so important, because the way we perceive the event as adults is very different from how the child perceives the event. So when parents understand that, then I think parents behave in a very different way, both towards their child and towards the other parent. They become much more careful about what they're saying in front of the child.
I would tell a friend, go early, take notes, and be open-minded. You know, don't view it as an absolute requirement. View it as, you know, sort of a comprehensive gift. Here's a toolkit. Here's a toolkit that's going to help you survive the most stressful, difficult time that you're going to go through in redefining who you are as a family and redefining your relationship or reaffirming your relationship with your children and your partner.
Judges say that they can tell immediately whether a parent has taken the COPE class or not. And if it's not just by looking in the file and seeing a check next to the parent's name, which the judge can easily do, but it's also the way in which the parent talks about the child in court, communicates immedately to the judge, I understand this situation from my child's point of view, or I don't understand this the situation from my child's point of view.
When I left there, I was like, wow, this makes sense, and maybe I shouldn't have said this, or I shouldn't have said that. And it just gets you thinking. You know, you gotta think before you say something. I can't go through life being angry, because if I'm gonna be angry, they're gonna be angry. And they're gonna see it, and they're gonna feel it, and they're gonna live that anger. And so I just, after that class, it's just that ride home, just after what I experienced during the class, the biggest thing for me, like I said, was that role playing. And that's what really allowed me to put myself in the kids' shoes. So it's allowed me to be a better parent, and I'm not perfect by any means. I know I have a few hiccups here and there, but
The COPE class is helping you answer that question: how do I want this to be for my children? And how do I want them to grow up?
Whether it was through the role playing that I saw or the videos that I saw, it was about me thinking creatively about what my children need, and that's on me. And it's not a one-time conversation. It's a conversation that happens repeatedly, and it's going to happen depending on things that will continue to pop up as the transition occurs. So always thinking about what do my children need and how do I meet them where they're at was modeled for me in the class and was the most important thing that I think got out of them.
go to the COPE class and pay attention. And when you leave the COPE class, is put the kids first.
To find out more about the COPE program, check the website on your screen. It's uvm.edu/extension/COPE. Our next segment looks ahead to the upcoming growing season. When it comes to growing flowers, UVM Extension horticulturalist Leonard Perry is among the best, but even he learns from other gardening experts. Leonard recently sat down with a gardening author whose books help homeowners create low-maintenance gardens.
Well, here with Extension, we're very fortunate to often have the opportunity to meet with lots of authors and famous people. And today, we have a good friend of mine with us, Kerry Mendez. Thanks so much, Kerry, for being here.
I love it. This is wonderful.
And what we'd like to look at is your new book that came out, The Right Size Flower Garden. Tell us, what is this topic about?
Well, I think many of us, including myself, felt that our gardens were becoming unmanageable, that we weren't able to keep up with their demands, and so I wanted to write a book that would help people take a fresh look at their gardens and be able to continue to have the beauty and the enjoyment, but reduce the maintenance by at least 50%. So have gardens that fit our changing lifestyles, so we don't feel like we're a slave to our gardens, and a lot of us feel slaves sometimes to our gardens. So I wanted to bring back that first love of how we first garden instead of feeling we've got too much out there to
I can
keep up
totally
with.
relate. You know, my gardens seem out of control, and yet I'm not, willing yet to give them up. I realize I can't do as much.
Yeah.
I just don't have the time, don't have the energy I used to, it seems like. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing what's in here. So what can somebody find in this book for tips?
Well, one of the things I kind of marry with, other than making it sustainable for me, and this answers your question, is also I try to bring in much more sustainable practices. So as we adjust our gardens, we need to embrace more low water, low fertilizer, no pesticides, building more natives. So it's as much about us being able to care for our gardens as it is caring for the planet. Having said that, the plants that I talk about in this book all have to be, fit those traits. I can't have water hogs in my gardens. I need to have plants that are pollinator friendly, ideally no fertilizer. So these are the types of plants I'm recommending, and also that have low care requirements as far as pruning, so low prune needs, low deadheading for perennials, all the things that we want. We want our gardens to work harder for us than we do for them. And that's what I try to
That's a real good
encompass
point, yeah,
in
because
this
there's
book.
so many things, and just by choosing different variety, for instance, different plant, you can have one that requires a lot less maintenance, and also I assume choosing the right plant for the right place will go a long way. So I guess there must be some design tips in here too, how to choose plants and place them.
I talk about a lot of different cool plants, as you say, assessing where you're putting them so they're in the right place right from the get-go. And I also talk about being more aware, as you say, of plants that work for us in our areas. One of the things, and I know I ruffle a lot of feathers with some folks, is I basically have walked away from most of the mop head hydrangeas, the big leaf hydrangeas, because they demand so much water and they can be inconsistent bloomers for colder zones. And I'm turning more to panicle hydrangeas and smooth hydrangeas that provide such rewards and beautiful flowers, and they're consistent bloomers and low water needs. And so a lot of these I'm doing switcheroos, what we have always gardened with, and now, they're better plants with less work. And they please us more.
Well, I can't wait to look at that. It sounds like a lot, not only for the low maintenance, but also sustainability, which is so key now. Yeah. Well, great. Well, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching today on Across the Fence. For University of Vermont Extension, I'm Leonard Perry.
Well, thanks, Leonard, and thank you for joining us. That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. I'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.